don't hurt me, I will do exactly as you want. This Friday, come to the river by 12 a.m. for an urgent meeting. Exactly 12 a.m.
This billionaire pastor got his power from a python until one night ruined everything. Touch my tongue so that I may know what to say on Sunday during service. Those poor ones with little money in their pockets, may they drop all they have after I speak. Standing by the edge of the river was a tall man. He was alone, no church members, no cameras, no praise singers, no crowd. He wore a long white garment that touched the ground. His feet were bare, pressing into the wet sand. His eyes were closed. Both his hands were raised up toward the sky. His face was serious, not like the smiling face people saw on television. This man was not just anyone. He was a very popular pastor, a billionaire pastor. People called him Daddy, some called him God's General, some said his words could change destiny. Yet here he was, alone by the river, shaking slightly. He opened his mouth and spoke slowly, with a deep baritone voice that echoed over the water. I have come, he said. Touch my tongue, so that I may know what to say on Sunday during service. When I speak, may their hearts melt. May people donate a lot of money. Even those poor ones with little money in their pockets, may they drop all they have after I speak. His voice did not sound like prayer. It sounded like a command. The river remained quiet for a few seconds. Then the water began to move. At first, it was small ripples, like something was breathing under the river. The pastor did not move. He did not open his eyes. He only stood there with his hands still raised. Suddenly, the water broke. A huge python slowly came out of the river. Its body was thick and long, shining under the moonlight. Water dropped from his scales as he lifted his head. The pastor opened his eyes and did not scream. He did not run. Instead, he opened his mouth wide as if he was waiting for food. The python raised his head very high. Its eyes were dark and deep, like they carried many secrets. Then he breathed into the pastor's mouth. The breath was heavy and hot. The pastor's body shook violently. His hands dropped. He staggered backward, almost falling into the sand. His eyes rolled, and his lips trembled. For a moment, it looked like he would collapse. Then he stood still again. The python slowly lowered his head, turned around, and slipped back into the river like nothing happened. The water closed over it. The river became calm again. The pastor wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. His face changed. There was power in his eyes now. Cold, strong power. He turned away from the river and began to walk slowly, proudly, like a king. A few meters away, hidden behind trees, were expensive cars parked quietly, black SUVs, shiny and new. Armed bodyguards stood alert, holding walkie-talkies. They did not know what happened at the river. They only knew their boss had gone for prayer. When they saw him coming, they quickly straightened up. One rushed forward and opened the back door of the biggest car. The pastor walked majestically, his white garments clean, his steps confident. He entered the car without a word. The door was closed gently. The convoy started moving. Engines hummed softly as they drove away from the river, leaving the darkness behind. Inside the car, the pastor leaned back and closed his eyes. Images flashed in his mind. Crowds, tears, money. He smiled slightly. He already knew what would happen on Sunday. Far away, in the city, people were preparing for church. Poor women counted their last notes. Some sold food items to get transport money. Some borrowed money just to attend the service. They all believed the pastor was holy. None of them knew about the river. None of them knew about the python. None of them knew who he really was. Sunday morning came very fast. The church building was massive. It looked like a stadium. Thousands of people filled the seats. Some stood outside watching from big screens. The choir sang powerful songs. People cried. People shouted amen. When the pastor finally came out, dressed in a dark suit, the whole place shook with noise. Daddy! Daddy! They screamed. He raised his hand, and the noise stopped immediately. Silence fell like magic. He began to preach. His voice was deep, smooth, and heavy. Every word entered their hearts like fire. As he spoke, people began to weep openly. Some held their chests. Some fell on their knees. They did not understand why they were crying. They only knew they felt something pushing them from inside. Behind the pastor, unseen by human eyes, a large python stood upright. His body coiled quietly, his head rested just behind the pastor's shoulder, his tongue flicked slowly. Nobody saw it, nobody felt fear. Instead, they felt love, guilt, hunger to give. The pastor spoke about sacrifice, he spoke about giving until it hurts. The crowd shook with emotion. When the offering time came, something strange happened. People rushed forward like they were being pulled. A poor woman dropped her entire market money into the basket and cried harder. A man removed money meant for rent and gave it out with shaking hands. Even children brought coins and notes, dropping everything they had. The pastor's voice became stronger. The python behind him moved closer, its shadow touching his back, feeding him silently. The pastor lifted his hands and spoke in tongues. The sound was strange, deep, and heavy. The crowd followed blindly. Ushers struggled to control people. Buckets of money filled quickly. Cameras captured tears and testimonies. Online viewers sent donations without stopping. The pastor smiled gently, acting humble, but inside him something laughed, something old, something hungry. The python's eyes glowed faintly as it slowly disappeared again, melting into the air behind the pulpit. The pastor wiped sweat from his face and continued preaching like nothing happened. After the service, the pastor returned to his private office. The room smelled of expensive perfume and leather. Bags of money were stacked neatly on the floor. Assistants counted silently. The pastor sat alone on his chair, breathing deeply. His tongue felt heavy, his chest felt warm. Outside, people praised his name. Online, clips of the service were already going viral. Powerful message, they wrote. God is truly with this man. The pastor closed his eyes and remembered the river again. He knew this was only the beginning. Something stirred inside him, reminding him of the promise he made by the water. Somewhere, far away, the river moved quietly again, and deep inside the water, something waited. One quiet afternoon, the pastor was alone in his private office inside the large church building. The office was silent, cold, and very clean. Thick curtains blocked the sunlight, and the air conditioner hummed softly. Expensive chairs, gold colored tables, and shelves filled with holy books surrounded him. He was seated comfortably, reading reports and counting money from the last service. Suddenly, without any warning, the office door slammed shut by itself. The loud sound echoed through the room like thunder. The pastor jumped up from his chair in fear. Before he could move or shout, the floor beneath him began to shake gently. Small cracks appeared on the tiles, spreading slowly like spider webs. Then the cracks widened and the floor broke open. From the opening, a huge python slowly rose. Dust filled the air as its long body pushed upward. The pastor froze completely. His mouth opened wide, but no sound came out. His eyes were wide with fear. His legs felt weak. The python lifted its head and stared directly at him. Its eyes were dark and deep, full of ancient knowledge. Then he spoke with a deep voice that sounded heavy and cold. This Friday, come to the river by 12 am for an urgent meeting. Exactly 12 am. The pastor nodded quickly, his head shaking in fear. He could not speak. His lips trembled. The python slowly went back into the floor. The broken tiles closed up. The cracks disappeared. Everything returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Just then, loud knocks filled the room. Knock, knock, knock. The pastor gasped and realized people had been knocking all along. Shaking badly, the pastor rushed to the door and opened it. Several church workers, assistants, and security men rushed inside at once. Some looked worried, some stared at his face closely. One man touched his arm and asked in a soft voice, Daddy, are you okay? Another said they heard strange noises, like loud bangs and heavy movements inside the office. The pastor forced a smile, though his heart was beating very fast. I am fine, he replied quickly. Nothing happened. They looked at him again, unsure. He became impatient and raised his voice. I said I am fine. I was praying loudly. You can all leave. Immediately, they bowed and left the office. When the door closed again, the pastor collapsed into his chair. Sweat covered his face. His hands trembled uncontrollably. He remembered the python's words clearly. Friday, 12 a.m. No delay. Fear followed him everywhere after that day. On Friday night, by exactly 10 p.m., he stepped into his luxury black car. His driver started the engine, and bodyguards followed behind in other vehicles. They drove quietly toward the river, but suddenly they reached a busy road filled with heavy traffic. Cars were stuck, horns were blaring, people were shouting. They were told a large truck had fallen across the road. The pastor checked the time again and again. His heart pounded. Minutes passed slowly. 10:30 p.m., 10:45 p.m., 11 p.m. The cars barely moved. His face turned pale with fear. By 11 p.m., the pastor could no longer sit still. He shouted at the driver to move, but there was nowhere to go. His fear turned into anger. He remembered the command clearly. Exactly 12 am, no excuse. Suddenly, he opened the car door and jumped out. People screamed in shock. His bodyguards shouted his name loudly, "Daddy, Daddy!" But he did not listen. He began to run through the crowd. His white clothes became dirty, sweat poured down his face. Some people tried to stop him, others pulled out their phones and started recording videos. His bodyguards ran after him, some trying to calm him, others blocking people from touching him. He ran non-stop, breathing hard, his chest burning, his legs ached, but fear pushed him forward. After more than 1 hour of running, he finally reached the river. It was already past midnight. The place was dark and silent. The water was calm. He fell on his knees beside the river and cried loudly, "Forgive me! Please forgive me! I came late!" He begged and begged. He waited. Nothing happened. The river did not move. The python did not appear. He stayed there all night, crying and shaking. Morning came slowly. Birds began to sing. Still nothing. His bodyguards stayed far away, thinking he was praying deeply. They waited with him for 2 days, hungry and tired. On the third day, they approached him. He stood up slowly, tears in his eyes, weak and broken, and entered the car silently. They drove home. It was Sunday. He freshened up, and the pastor stood on the altar again. The church was full at first, but something was very wrong. His voice no longer carried power. His words sounded empty. As he preached, people began to feel uncomfortable. One by one, they stood up and walked out of the church. Some shook their heads in confusion. Others whispered to each other. The pastor panicked inside, but he continued preaching. More people left. When it was time for offering, only a few people came forward. The baskets were almost empty. Online viewers closed the live stream. His assistants exchanged worried looks. Week after week, the crowd reduced. Miracles stopped. Testimonies stopped. Donations stopped. Money vanished from his accounts. His properties were seized. His cars were taken away. His powerful friends disappeared. People mocked him openly. The man who once controlled thousands now struggled to control his own life. He returned to the river many times, but nothing answered him. The python never returned. The power was gone forever. Soon, the pastor became very poor. He sold his expensive clothes, he sold his houses, he moved into a small, dirty room. People passed him on the street without greeting. Some did not recognize him at all. His name faded from memory. At night, he cried alone and remembered the river. He remembered the deal he made. He remembered the exact time he failed to keep. His body became weak, his face grew thin, fear became his daily companion. He could not sleep well, he could not eat properly. He lived with regret every day. One cold night, he lay quietly on his bed, staring at the ceiling. There were no assistants, no bodyguards, no crowd, no power, just silence. Slowly, he closed his eyes and breathed his last breath. The pastor died quietly in his small room. There was no crowd at his burial, no cameras, no praise, just a shallow grave and silence. The church building was abandoned. Grass grew around it. The river continued to flow quietly somewhere far away. Deep inside it, something still waited for another victim. The story of the billionaire pastor became a warning whispered among a few people, a reminder that borrowed power always comes with a price, and when the time is missed, there is no second chance.